When Era first arrived in the city, confidence was something he believed other people were born with. It lived in their straight backs, their easy laughter, and the way they spoke without apologizing for every word. Arav, on the other hand, carried his doubts like a second shadow. Wherever he went, it followed him, into classrooms, onto buses, and even into his dreams. He was 22, fresh from a small town where life moved slowly and expectations were modest. The city was different. Buildings rose like giants, people walked fast, and conversations sounded sharp and certain. Era felt small among them, as if he had entered a play without learning his lines. On his first day at work, he sat in the corner of the office meeting room, notebook open, pen still. Others spoke freely. Ideas flowed, jokes landed, opinions clashed. Arav had ideas too, but they stayed trapped inside his chest. Each time he considered speaking, a voice whispered, "What if you sound foolish? What if they judge you?" By the time he gathered the courage, the moment had passed. That evening, he returned to his tiny rented room, dropped his bag, and stared at the cracked ceiling. "Why am I like this?" he asked the empty room. He had skills, he worked hard, yet confidence felt like a locked door he didn't know how to open. The first lesson: awareness. Change began quietly, not with a grand decision, but with a small realization. One Sunday morning, Arav sat in a cafe near his room watching people. A woman confidently typed on her laptop, a man laughed loudly with his friends, a barista calmly handled a long queue. Arav noticed something strange. None of them looked perfect. The woman frowned at her screen. The man stumbled over his words mid-laugh. The barista spilled a little coffee. Yet they didn't shrink. They didn't apologize for existing. That's when it struck him. Confidence wasn't about being flawless. It was about being comfortable with imperfection. That day, Arav bought a small notebook and wrote on the first page, "Confidence is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to move despite it." He began to observe himself, not with harsh judgment, but with curiosity. He noticed how his shoulders hunched when he felt unsure, how his voice softened at the end of sentences, how he avoided eye contact. Awareness, he realized, was the first step. You couldn't change what you refused to see. The second lesson: small promises. Arav had always believed that to become competent, he needed to do something big, give a speech, lead a project, impress everyone. But big goals felt heavy and distant. They scared him into inaction. So he tried something different. He started making small promises to himself and keeping them. On Monday, the promise was simple: speak once in the meeting, even if it was just a question. His heart raced when the moment came. His palms were sweaty, but he raised his hand and asked for clarification on a point he didn't understand. No one laughed, no one judged. The meeting continued. That night, Era felt something unfamiliar: pride. Not because he sounded brilliant, but because he acted despite fear. The next promise was to greet the security guard every morning, then to make eye contact while ordering food, then to share one idea per week at work. Each fulfilled promise was like placing a brick. Alone, each brick seemed small. Together, they were building something solid. Confidence, Arav learned, was built on trust. Trust in yourself that you will show up when you say you will. The third lesson: skill builds confidence. One evening, Arav overheard two colleagues discussing a presentation. "She's so confident," one said. "Yes, she always knows her stuff," the other replied. That sentence stayed with him. She knows her stuff. Arav realized that confidence often grows from competence. When you understand something deeply, fear loses its power. So he committed to learning. He stayed after work to improve his skills, not to impress others, but to strengthen himself. He read books, watched tutorials, asked questions even when it felt uncomfortable. Each new skill sharpened his sense of control. As his knowledge grew, something shifted. He no longer felt like an imposter waiting to be exposed. He felt prepared, and preparation, he discovered, is quiet confidence. The fourth lesson: the voice inside. Despite his progress, Arav still had bad days. Days when the old voice returned. You're not good enough. They're better than you. Don't try, you'll fail. One night, after a particularly rough day, Arav sat on his bed and wrote down every negative thought that crossed his mind. The page filled quickly. Then he did something unusual. Next to each thought, he wrote a response, calm, honest, and kind. You're not good enough. I am learning, and that is enough today. They're better than you. They have their journey. I have mine. Don't try, you'll fail. If I fail, I will learn. He realized that confidence wasn't about silencing the inner critic. It was about not letting it drive. From that day on, Arav practiced speaking to himself like he would to a friend, with patience, encouragement, and respect. The fifth lesson: body and breath. One morning, Arav noticed how differently he felt after a short walk. His mind felt clearer, his chest lighter. He began to pay attention to his body. He straightened his posture while walking. He slowed his breathing when anxious, inhaling deeply, exhaling slowly. He exercised regularly, not to look impressive, but to feel strong. It amazed him how much the body influenced the mind. Standing tall made him feel capable. Breathing deeply made him feel calm. Moving regularly made him feel alive. Confidence, he realized, wasn't just mental, it was physical. The turning point. 6 months after arriving in the city, Arav faced a moment he once feared more than anything. His manager asked him to present a project update to the team. The old Arav would have panicked, searched for excuses, or hoped someone else would take over. This time, his heart still raced, but he said yes. He prepared carefully. He practiced out loud. He reminded himself that nervousness was not danger, it was energy. On the day of the presentation, Arav stood at the front of the room. His hands trembled slightly, but his voice was steady. He didn't aim to be perfect, he aimed to be clear. And that was enough. When he finished, there was a brief silence, then applause. Later, a colleague smiled and said, "You looked confident up there." Arav smiled back, knowing a secret. Confidence hadn't arrived suddenly. It had been built, slowly, patiently, brick by brick. The final lesson: confidence is a practice. Years later, Arav would look back and realize something important. Confidence was never a destination. It didn't stay forever once achieved. Some days it was strong, some days it wavered, but now he knew how to rebuild it. by being aware, by keeping small promises, by learning continuously, by speaking kindly to himself, by caring for his body, by acting even when afraid. Confidence, Arav learned, is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming comfortable being yourself. And that, he understood, is the strongest confidence of all.